All right, guys, this is Now That's Debatable. Um, Thank you for tuning in. My co host is going to be jumping on now in a few minutes. But until he gets on, I just wanted to go ahead and start the episode. Hold on. Here he is right now. What's going on, Fasad?
Hello, I'm here. I've been here the whole time. I was about to text you.
Oh, okay. Well, we're live now. Wanted to thank you for coming on Tangelo. We didn't really get to narrow down the topic in our emails, but I had assumed just by the nature of the comments that you were making that it was something about the existence of God. Well, we're atheists, and what are you? Are you Catholic, Reformed, Christian, evangelical? What you got going
Yes,
on?
I am evangelical.
Okay, cool. All right. So I guess I like to just maybe we can narrow things down as we go. But right now I like to just start like kind of broadly. You know, why do you believe in not just specifically Christianity, but like a God at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think in my approach, when I have a conversation with atheists, I start always with the very basic question that is,
Hmm.
does a God exist or does a God not exist? Where does the evidence lead and what is the more plausible explanation?
Hmm.
So when I say what is the most plausible explanation, I already implicitly say that we have no proofs in regards of ultimate questions, in regards of the existence or non-existence of God. So it is moot and non-meaningful to actually challenge the opposite side and ask, "Do you have proofs?" No, I don't have proofs, and neither does any atheist have proofs that the physical natural world is all there is. So this is a moot
Well,
question.
okay, I think so. Maybe it sounds like you kind of mixed atheism with naturalism for a second. Like you said, you don't have proof that God exists, and you say atheists don't have proof that the natural world is all that there is. That's not necessarily what atheists believe. Like many
Yeah, I
atheists
don't.
are
I really don't.
naturalists, but
Yeah, I really don't want to go that rabbit hole down to define what atheism means. When I say atheist, then it is the understanding that an atheist doesn't believe that God exists. It's not
okay,
that an atheist just rejects what the atheists believe, but that he positively does not believe in any deity.
okay. So I don't use that definition of atheism, but that's also not what you had said earlier. You said that atheists don't have proof that the natural world is all that there is. So like that's not even about God. That's
Yeah.
a position on naturalism, right?
Well,
So
the
that
question is epistemological. How do you come to meaningful conclusions in regards of ultimate reality? And there I say, the quest of, I mean, many of my opponents and atheists, they challenge me and they say, well, do you have proofs that God exists? No, I don't. And neither do you that the natural physical world is all there is. So,
got you.
since we do not have any
So,
empirical proof in regards of ultimate reality, challenging the other side in regards of that is not meaningful in my understanding.
well,
So
first, hold on. Like first, like can we like narrow down on some definition? I know you said you didn't want to spend time defining everything, but I think it is important to define a few things. That way, we're not talking past each other. Because like the way you define, like I consider myself an atheist, so is Facade. Now, the way you define atheism, me and Facade wouldn't be atheists because we don't assert that there are no gods. Like it's going to be based on how you define that God, right? What we'd say is that we see no compelling evidence to believe in a God, so we just simply lack belief in a God, right? Now, depending on how you define certain gods, I can speak for both of us and say that there are certain gods that we would say we know do not exist. Like if there is a god that and then you define them as having properties that contradicted each other, we would rule that god out. Like if you
Yeah,
say
and I
there is
would,
a
yeah,
God, that's a
and I would rule out that deity too, because if it has contradicting properties, then of course it cannot exist, right?
okay. Oh, cool.
So
So now
it
when
has
you
to
say
be a logically plausible or possible definition. That's why I describe God as a contrast to the no God hypothesis as eternal, powerful, conscious, and intelligent. There
okay,
are no contradictions in these definitions. Therefore, a God with these properties is possible. So,
okay, cool. And
and
now,
I
so
yeah.
I'll grant you like your definition of God. Would you also grant us our definition of atheism? Since we're the ones they're saying we're atheists, would you grant our
Well,
definition of atheist?
well, I have no problem to grant it. Now, the problem which I have with weak atheism is that, I mean, I don't parade around to tell others what I don't believe in. I think this is not meaningful. I don't care what you don't believe in. What I do want to know is what you actually propose, what
Yeah.
you actually positively believe in, and why. And if you think that the no God hypothesis has superior explanatory power in
Mm.
regards of ultimate reality and our origins, hey, then be my guest. And it's not just
So
shifting the burden of proof, because I think anyone that has a proposal has the burden of proof. And if someone believes that no God is necessary to explain our existence, then this is also something which has to be backed up.
okay, so now you had said at the beginning that you said that you seem like you insinuated that we go around parading what we don't believe in. Like neither one of us do that. And then you said you want to know what we actually believe in. Like, so it depends what we're talking about. Like, I believe in all sorts of things. I believe I'm
No,
black.
we
I
are
believe I'm wearing a
talking
blue shirt.
about
So
ultimate
we're
reality, about our origins.
no, I
That's
know.
what
I, I
it's
thought I
about.
thought we were talking about God. So like now, so you see what I'm saying? Like now you've expanded the conversation. So let's stay on God, right? So
Well,
we can.
the thing is that atheists, they love to hack around the theistic worldview, criticize it,
Okay, so
scrutinize it,
all right, so
but
that's
they
nice. Hold on. So
never do.
let's not talk about other atheists. Let's talk about me, you and I. Like we've just met, so I don't know what other atheists you've encountered. Let's just talk to me. Just talk to Facade. So you say you believe in a God. Like I don't. I don't think that I am not convinced that a God is necessary to explain my existence.
Okay, so I want to know how you explain our existence without a creator.
So, all right. So, what do you mean? Like the Big Bang, or like
There are three
me, or
main there are three main issues which are literally unsolved at all in regards of origins. One is the origin of the universe, the second is the origin of life,
okay?
and the third one is the origin of consciousness. These are three big open questions,
All right. So,
and
if they're unsolved, why would that be evidence of God?
well, they are unsolved under the naturalistic framework. Okay,
Well,
they are
I
unsolved under
know
the
Christians
naturalistic
can. So
framework.
you could, I know since you're a Christian, like you could make up an answer and just say God spoke the universe into existence. That's not solving anything. Like that's just making up an answer. Like I can do the same thing. I could say a banana made the universe, right?
Yeah,
So
first
like,
of all, when you are saying that doesn't solve anything, then implicitly you are meaning that I do not have any proofs of my assertions. And as I said previously, no, I don't. Now, here is the thing.
evidence. So not
When-
proof. I'm talking about evidence.
Yeah,
So
okay. So proof is one thing, evidence is another thing. So the
yeah.
question is, where does the evidence point to? And when we are talking about evidence, what do we mean by evidence? And I define evidence, first of all, we deal with what is. So we look around us and we see
Mhm.
the natural physical world, and we want to make sense of it. We want to understand why does something exist rather than not? Why does the universe, life, and consciousness and everything around us, the physical world, exist rather than not? We want answers to that. So, and now we have basically two competing hypotheses, and that can be defined in
No, we
two
don't. So
broad
Antonio,
categories.
that's a lie. So okay, so the Lambda-Cedian model and God are not two competing hypotheses. Like the Lambda-Cedian model is accepted by the vast majority of the experts on the origin of the universe, and they do not take God seriously. Like
No, that's
even
not what I am talking about. I think
even
you're
the Christian
misunderstanding.
okay.
I think you're misunderstanding what I am saying.
You
What I
said there
am
was two.
saying is this: there are basically two competing worldviews, and this is a true dichotomy. Either God does exist or he does not exist,
Yes,
right? Okay,
yes.
so when I define God in a beginning conversation with atheists, I define God as I just did: eternal, powerful, conscious, and intelligent. Okay,
Okay.
so either a God with these characteristics and this definition
Hmm.
exists or does not exist. And now the big question is, which of the two competing hypotheses are more plausible once we look around us, once we look into the physical world and we want to make sense of it? Either a God with these characteristics
Yes,
is the
I'm
superior,
familiar
more
with this. Yeah,
plausible
I
explanation or
I know
not.
what the true dichotomy is. Okay, but okay, what did you look at and infer God? Like, what did you see and think? There's no way this thing could exist unless there was a God.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Hmm.
And I think in order to meaningfully and plausibly answer the question, we need to make a distinction or detect what are actually the signs of intelligent past action that can be detected and that we know that non-intelligent mechanisms are not capable to instantiate these phenomena. Okay, so first you need to
Hmm.
define what is it that intelligence can do that non-intelligence cannot do. This is very important in order for you to actually look around you and then detect the
Okay.
signature of intelligence.
So from what I can tell, I've never seen any intelligence create a star or a galaxy. I've seen
Well,
intelligent
I say
minds
this.
create
First of
computers.
all, first
Sure,
of all, demanding that you can experience with your senses that a deity does something. This is in my
okay. No,
understanding.
I didn't say anything about that. So you were talking about what can intelligence slash and non-intelligence do, right? Now, when we talk about the origin of the universe, we look at things in the universe, galaxies, stars, etc. Never seen an intelligent mind create those things. Wouldn't that be evidence against what you believe?
No, no. I say basically this: what is the path to the cause.
Okay,
Okay,
but
so
okay,
I
but
do not. And I give you
why?
here a very
Well,
practical
but
example.
why wouldn't that be evidence? If we know stars exist and we've never seen an intelligent mind create one, wouldn't that be indicative of the idea that a non-intelligence made the star?
No.
Especially if we can explain how a star works from beginning to the end, which is I can actually do that for you. I'm quite the
Well,
physics nerd.
well, these are different questions. One is what operational science works with, which is trying to explain how something works. And the other scientific question, which is actually a quite different question, is how did things come to be? And that involves historical events. So we are
Okay,
talking
what
here about
specifically?
historical science.
So
So
when you
first
talk
of all,
about
we
Monzo, so let's narrow in on one thing. Let's find one thing that you believe could not exist without a God, and let's talk about that.
instructional information to make a machine with a specific function, for example.
Okay, so what do you mean by instructional information? And when we talk about
Okay,
like
so
machines, those are defined. Those by definition, like people create those things, right? So
okay,
if we were to
so
find something in nature, you wouldn't call it a machine, regardless of the properties that it has.
okay, so first of all, you asked me what is instructional information.
Yes.
So I am a machine designer by profession. That's what I learned as a profession. And what does a machine designer do? So maybe an engineer comes to me and tells me, okay, so our company needs a machine to
Okay.
perform this
So
action and to have this
I know where
specific
you
fund.
I know where you're going, right? So like I understand like the instructions to build a machine. Now, when we talk about a star, when we talk about like a hydrogen cloud and then gravity causing it to collapse, which is a requirement for the beginning parts of a star, would you call that instructions? Would you call that instructional information? The gravity that is bringing the hydrogen together.
Well, the thing is, once we
Yes or no?
well, you're moving the topic because I'm not talking about this right now. I am
No,
talking.
but okay, but so we know the machines that you work on in the factory. We agree those were created by an intelligent mind. So like we're all in agreement here. But I think we disagree with stars. You think stars were made by God, right?
Well, let's keep
Well,
currently to the
Angelo,
point
Angelo, can you
which
answer
I
my
just
question? You believe stars
chosen
were made by God?
because
That's literally what it says in the Bible, right? So
I
stars
I
were made on the fourth
believe.
day.
Okay,
Okay,
listen.
so what I'm asking is, when we talk about a star, the gravity that pulls it in, would you call that gravity instructional information?
No.
Okay, so what part of the star would you call instructional information?
Well, maybe you would let me talk, and then I would explain to you why I am bringing up this topic.
Go ahead.
Okay, so would you agree that when you see a plan with the precise instructions to make a machine that has a specific function, with the measures with the size measures, with defining the materials, probably different parts which then interact together, and then the instructions how to fit the parts together to have that machine which has a specific function. When you see a plan like this, then we know intelligence is a capable
Okay,
source
so you asked me a
to
question.
instantiate this blueprint. Do
All
you
right, so
agree
yeah,
with that?
so it depends. So if that plan, if that plan comes in a format that is only known to be produced by intelligent minds, especially humans, then yes, I would say that'd be indicative of an intelligent mind. Like for instance, if it's written with with alphabets in the English language or Portuguese, wherever, on like on a pieces of paper, right? That's only something that people do. So I would call, yes, if I were to see that, I would say, yes, that is indicative of an intelligent mind. But if we
Okay.
were to look at the properties of star or the amount of hydrogen in a cloud, right? Or just the different atoms cloud all together be
Dai, si torna live, figlia.
that I wouldn't say that that is indicative of an intelligent mind. So it depends on the format. And it depends on what you're calling a plan. That's why I was asking if you would call gravity that brings in the hydrogen instructions, because it
That's not
doesn't
what
seem to be
I'm
clear.
talking about.
I know that's not what you're talking about. The example you gave, of course, that would be an example of an intelligent mind,
Good.
right?
Yes, we agree on that.
Because of the format that it's sent. Right, you said like if it's written on a paper in a human language, then yeah, then duh, an intelligent mind wrote that.
Okay, so the key issue here is not that it is human. The key issue here is that we know that intelligence is a capable cause and source of instructions that define how to construct a machine that has a specific function. So we know by our own experience, and I as a machine designer in special know that I with intelligent capabilities, I am able to create instructional information to make machines. So there is no question about that. And you just agreed with me that this is a capable source,
I
correct?
said it depends on the format that the instructions came in. So if the format was in something that only humans produce, then I agree. Like if it was written in a language, in a human language, on pieces of paper, right? The things like that don't just come about naturally, right? It's not like a tree grows and boom, pops out the plans, pops out instructions on how to build a bookcase or a VCR or something like that. So it depends on how the form that is taking.
Well, the thing is this, that
Well, what I
whenever you
see,
see a blueprint, it
mhm,
doesn't matter if it is human or not. What the key issue here is that we know that intelligence is a capable source to instantiate instructional information. There is no doubt that this works because by our own experience, we do it all the time. I, as a machine designer, do it all the time.
yes, format is only in if it's only in a form that's only known to be produced intelligently. That's the part that you're missing. Because if instructions on how to assemble a car were naturally occurring, if let's say there was some random ass coconut tree that was just naturally popping out instructions on how to assemble a Tesla, if you were to find instructions, there would be no way to determine whether or not it was naturally occurring or if it was actually written by somebody else, because we have examples of both of those things occurring. That's why the format matters. If the form, if we know that that form only exists through an intelligence, then we know that is in what we can say that is indicative of intelligence.
Well, the thing is this, as I said previously, that we know by our own experience that intelligence is a capable source to create blueprints with which then can be used to make, for example, a machine for specific purposes. So I think this is something that you agree with and that we all can agree with, right?
Yes, for blueprints, yes. Blue like on a blue piece of paper with written in English with lines and stuff that we know only occur through human intervention. Yes. If we were to see that, yes, that is indicative of
Yeah,
an
so I
intelligent
don't
design.
want that you emphasize human because that's missing the point. The
Cool.
point is that what
The
is
I
really
got you.
the
The
key issue
blueprints.
here is that intelligence is a capable source and cause because we know this can happen. You know that machine
Through
designers or
the
engineers can do
through
it.
through blueprints, specifically blueprints. I will concede that.
Okay, so now here is the thing. When you let's suppose that you would go to Mars,
Hmm.
okay? Uh, uh, Elon Musk would have created already the spaceship to go to Mars, and there you would suddenly encounter an abandoned city and eventually factories, and you would go to the engineering department and then you would find suddenly blueprints there. So this would certainly be indication that intelligent aliens probably were there, built that city, and then left Mars.
Okay, now let me add to that. So that would be evidence that intelligent aliens or whatever did that. If and only if I I only knew those things to be naturally occurring. If we were to find out more things about the universe and then understand that somehow on some planets city, now all of a sudden I'm a lot less confident that what I found on Mars is the
You
hey,
froze.
yeah, I froze. I froze.
You
But
you keep
but
freezing. You got to get off that Walmart Wi-Fi or whatever the heck you're
yeah, I
on.
know, my bad. Okay, but what I was saying was like, so it, when I find out city on Mars, that will only be evidence of an intelligent civilization if and only if I only knew those things to be occurring by an intelligent mind. If I were to find more things about the universe and then find out that on some planets cities can just naturally occur, now I'll be a lot less confident that that city is evidence of intelligence.
Yeah, but you cannot work with unshown hypotheses. What you have to work with is with the background knowledge that you already have. So if you get to Mars and you see there an abandoned city with factories and engineering departments, and there you find blueprints, and based on the background knowledge that we do have, it is more plausible to say it is most likely the case that an unknown an alien civilization and aliens got on Mars prior to us and did build that city, and they also did build factories and used blueprints to make machines and so forth, rather than to conclude, well, it seems just the case that happenstance and natural causes made these blueprints. In my
Yes, but
understanding, this
again,
is
with
a more plausible and logical conclusion to come to, rather than to say, well, even if we don't know that chance or random happenstance can do it, even if we never seen it happening, it is more plausible to believe that.
that's not what
No,
I'm
I don't
saying.
think
I said, but Antangelo, I said if and only if that we only knew to for that city to for cities to occur through intelligence.
All right, we
Like,
spent 25 minutes being really pedantic. Can someone make a point?
well, I would like to
Yeah,
hear.
if you permit, I will make my point. I've not been
Can we get
able because
specific?
Giblet has interrupted me.
Antangelo,
But
can we get to the specific thing that you say that is indicative of an intelligent design? Because you're building up this elaborate analogy that I feel like is not very well structured. Because like there's a lot of things that you have to consider. Like let's just get straight to the thing.
Wherever the chase is, let's cut to it because we spent 25 minutes trying to agree that intelligence is a method of showing that machines can exist. I mean,
well,
that's so far the only thing we can come
I
up.
can make you a very simple syllogism and make my point.
Okay, let's do that.
Blueprints always come from intelligence. DNA stores a blueprint to make
No.
molecular
Now,
machines.
this is exactly where I
Well, now
thought you
you
was
are
going.
interrupting me.
No,
You are
Antangelo,
interrupting me.
because
You are interrupting me, and I don't like
Antangelo,
it.
Antangelo, hold
Please.
on. Look,
You,
I
you,
knew
you,
this is
you said
Antangelo,
Triple
make
A,
your
hold on.
Triple
case.
A,
I am
Triple
trying
A.
to make my
Let
case,
him
and
finish
you
the
interrupt.
syllogism, and
Alright.
then we're going to deconstruct why the syllogism is wrong.
Okay,
But go ahead and finish your syllogism. Blueprints always come from intelligence. A. Now what?
Right. DNA stores the blueprint of life. It stores the instructional information to make all the machinery, the proteins which are required in order for life to work. Therefore, it is plausible to conclude that the information stored in DNA comes from intelligence rather than from unguided events.
Okay, I reject
Antangelo,
premise B on the fact that DNA is not a blueprint and proteins are not machines.
I didn't say that DNA is a blueprint. You need to be very careful listening to what I am saying.
you said
I
there's
reject
blueprints
that
in the DNA.
proteins are
Yeah,
machines.
I said DNA stores
A blueprint.
instructional information, which we
You
can
use the word
define.
You
blueprint.
used the word blueprint. Antangelo,
Okay,
you used
you
the word
also said
blueprint.
that
storing. Okay,
you
so
also said
storing
that
a blueprint
protein-
isn't the same as saying
Angelo,
DNA is a blueprint.
I let you talk. I let you get your syllogism out. You said directly that proteins are machines.
Yes.
That is definitionally incorrect.
No, that is not definitionally incorrect. This is
Yeah,
literally a fact.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
Can
so
you define
so
machine for
Google,
me?
yes, a machine
Go ahead.
is a device which is made usually of several interacting interlocked parts which work in a joint venture together to have a higher order function.
Okay, so can a tree be a machine? It has a higher function. It consists of multiple parts.
I don't
The
think
answer would be
Can a
yes.
wheel? Can a wheel be a machine?
no, what I am saying is that proteins are machines. They are molecular machines.
In the sense that they contain multiple parts? Is that all
Yes.
it takes to be a machine?
No, they are made of several amino acid strands which
Yeah,
work in a
I
joint
agree with
venture
that.
together. And many proteins, they have um, in the catalytic core, they have, for example, sulfur, iron sulfur cores, which are necessary to have the catalytic action. So, and all these parts, they work together like a machine indeed to
But
produce
hold up.
specific
Can you
product.
pause right there? You said these things work together like a machine. I noticed you didn't say they work together as a machine. So when
Well,
we use these things,
I
this
mean,
is a beautiful thing about language. When we use things like similes, we can describe how something functions in relation to how something else functions. That's called a simile. I can say that this machine runs like a clock. I can say that this car is as fast as a cheetah, right? But I'm not saying that cars are cheetahs, right?
well,
You see how this works?
yeah, I mean, feel free just to Google molecular machine and see if this is not a very common term used in
But Antangelo,
microbiology and
like
biochemistry.
the issue that I'm having is the way you define machine. Like almost
That's
anything could
not
be a
my
machine.
definition. That's not my definition. This is a
Okay,
scientific term which
so
is universally accepted.
is a tree
Proteins are molecular machines,
is a
not in
tree
an
machine?
analogous. No, I wouldn't define it as a machine,
Why
but
not?
proteins are.
Sure, but why not? It's an apparatus using and applying several parts with a definite.
Keep breaking
I
up.
mean, if you want to read it again, be my guest. But a tree definitely meets that criteria.
Well, I mean, if you want to say that the tree is a machine, fine. What I am saying is that this is not a usual used term for trees, but proteins, yes, you can Google it. Proteins are molecular machines.
Okay. So you have DNA, which is stored in, or it stores a blueprint, and proteins, which carry out a function.
Yes.
And so you conclude that that equals intelligent design, or lends
Well,
credence to
you
an intelligent
maybe
design.
didn't consider as well the connection between DNA and proteins, because what happens is that the information stored in DNA is expressed through RNA polymerase, it is transcribed, then the RNA strand is transported to the ribosome and it is translated into proteins. So that there is an interdependence from DNA to RNA to proteins. So proteins are needed to make DNA, but DNA is needed to make proteins.
Antangelo.
So the question is,
Well,
what came first? That's the classical chicken and egg problem. What came first, DNA or
So
protein?
Antangelo, so remember, so this is what the problem that I was having at the beginning before you built out this analogy, because I knew this is exactly where you were going. You're going to say blueprints are only known to be created by an intelligent mind. That's why I was saying yes, blueprints specifically, right, on a blue piece of paper with lines drawn and instruction, all that kind of stuff, because we know the only way they come about is through intelligent minds, humans specifically. I knew you were going to go to something like DNA or the cosmos or something, right? So what in order for your analogy to fit, we need to find actual blueprints of DNA.
And we have that. DNA stores literally a blueprint, which is instructional assembly information to make proteins. How is it assembly information?
Show me a picture of the blueprint.
Well, you are not listening.
You said it literally intangible.
You said problem. This is the problem of you guys and the atheists. You guys are not listening.
We are listening. That's the problem.
You guys think that you have.
You just said it literally stores
naturalistic framework. And when an atheist comes into a show like yours and tries actually to explain the facts how they are, you interrupt.
They aren't facts. I was interrupting because your analogy was poorly structured. That's why I was giving all of these caveats from the beginning, because I knew exactly where you were going. Like, I could smell it from a mile away, and I got a cold. I can't smell shit right now. All right. So now you said that DNA literally stores blueprints. Do you want to take that back?
No.
What the fuck do you think blueprints are?
A blueprint contains instructional information to make, for example, a machine that has a specific function. This is literally what we see in DNA. We see instructions, for example, to make a protein. And how are these instructions?
When I said I agreed with your assessment about blueprints being derived from an intelligent mind, remember I gave the caveat, specifically blueprints. I wasn't talking about an analogy that would pertain to any sort of instructions on how to do anything. I said specifically blueprints. I'm talking about a piece of paper with lines and shit that's drawn on it that give you the instructions of how to do that. If we were to find blueprints, literally those for DNA, that would be evidence that DNA may be intelligently designed. That is not what you find. You're using an analogy. That's
what we see. It is an analogy, yes, but it is also so.
That's literally
in
a fallacy. That's what I'm saying. Your argument.
Can we both pause for a second? I have a question. Do you think that magnets give instructions on ferrous materials?
Well, I don't think so, and it has nothing to do with what I am saying.
No. This does have something to do, and I swear it's not a trap. It's just a question. So you're aware that ferrous materials means that a magnet has an impact on them, right?
Well, why are you changing the subject rather than
I'm asking you,
what we are talking about?
Because
you are just interrupting what we are trying to elucidate.
Okay, Otangelo, let me bear the witness for you, since I have to hold your hand and since we can't go down this together. The reason I'm asking you if you think that magnets and ferrous materials give instructions to ferrous materials, then that means I have a better understanding of what you mean when you understand, or when you think you understand, what DNA does. Something that has a function and impacts something else does not make it a machine, nor does it mean it gives blueprints. A magnet interacts with ferrous material because of the force of magnetism. So if a magnet is giving instructions to ferrous materials to realign the way that it interacts with a particular metal, then if you call that instructions, then we have a fundamental misunderstanding of what instructions are for DNA. Because when we look at what DNA does and how it interacts, it's much like how magnets interact with certain metals. It realigns. Yes.
No.
Okay. Please explain to me what you think the instructions are that nucleic acid gives to a gene structure. As much or as little depth as you'd like, because I don't even think you knew that that's what that was.
I think you have no clue what you're talking about.
Okay, let's pretend I don't. Can you explain it like I'm 5?
Yes.
Because $1,000 says otherwise, but go ahead.
I am trying, and you are nitpicking, and you are arguing
Okay,
that you
so
spent.
no,
Wow,
no,
why
no.
are you
Go
interrupting
ahead.
me?
Explain how
Both of you guys are interrupting.
Explain how
constantly,
nucleic acid
and
impacts a macromolecule to give it instructions as its function.
yeah, that's a misconstrued question because it isn't that it does impact macromolecule. It impacts how a
Can you
protein is constructed because the
can,
nucleotide
can you no,
sequence
no, okay,
is
pause.
wow,
Okay,
why I am interrupting
because you said I
again?
have no clue what I'm
Because I
talking
am
about, but
not
you don't know the
able to
difference in
making any
nucleic
point
acid
when
and
I am
amino acids.
constantly being
You don't
interrupted.
even know the
So
difference in nucleic.
so listen,
Dude,
either
Hold
you
on.
let me
you
talk
have
or
to
I leave
pause.
the stream. Okay.
You
So
said
give
I
me
have no clue what I'm
no,
talking about,
listen.
right?
So
No,
listen.
pause.
Either you give me now 3
Antangelo.
minutes to explain to you what DNA
No,
does,
you're
or
not
I
going to
leave
get the
the
chance
stream.
because you're not going to
That's
get the
fine.
chance because you don't even understand. Yeah. Okay. Let me explain to the audience, since he doesn't seem to know the difference in nucleic acids and amino acids, that amino acids are what make proteins. Nucleic acids like DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and RNA, ribonucleic acid, are your instructional format for genes. It is a function of DNA and RNA. When you say I have no clue what the hell I'm talking about, you better understand that I've spent lots of time. Now, I'm not a geneticist, nor am I a biologist or a microbiologist, but I have spent some time, given my, 4 years of discussions with evolutionists and non-evolutionists and theists and Christians and everyone alike, to take a little bit of time to understand how deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid, DNA and RNA, are separate from macromolecules, which make up amino acids, which make up proteins. It is a polymer chain that forms together to give something a function, specifically macromolecules. If you disagree with that, you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what DNA and RNA are. They do not make proteins. Amino acids make proteins. They are a separate form of acids that are found within chemical analysis of the body. So maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about, or maybe if you Googled the difference in amino and nucleic acids, you'd have a better understanding of what proteins versus DNA are.
I was just put out a message saying like any other theists could jump on a stream, but this is why, like I was kind of like annoyed about how long he took to get to the point, because I knew this where this was going. It was going to be an argument from analogy. He was going to say, "Here's this thing that we know that is man-made. Instructions are used to create the thing. Here's this other thing, and they are like instructions. Therefore, this was also created by some sort of intelligent mind." That's exactly where we was going with that. So it's called an argument from analogy. It's the fallacy. Like you can do this with all sorts of things, right? You can say, basketball was invented by James Naismith. The sun is similar to a basketball. Therefore, it was also invented by James Naismith, right? You can do this all day. But it's a very. Go ahead.
This is exactly why, and this is why he refused to answer the question of magnets. Like, it seems like such a simple and off-topic question, but the minute I brought it up, he knew he was done for. Because we're talking about how something functions. When we're talking about DNA and RNA, we're talking about a functional equivalency of how polymer peptides and nucleotides form in the body and perform a certain function. This does not mean that there is a written out code of instruction. It is literally a set of 4, a subset of 4. I think what is DNA? Is it's T, N, A, there's one more, but there's 4, and any combination of these 4 can actually tell you how something is going to function within DNA. Right? Like these are polymers that form a polymer chain or a polymer peptide, or more specifically a nucleic acid, or DNA or RNA, a nucleotide, right? Because now you have things that have formed together to give something a function. So if you mix this chemical, this specific nucleic acid, and this specific nucleic acid, you get an outcome. By the way, that is chemistry 101, not specific to nucleotides, but that is how things work in general. You mix hydrogen and oxygen, right? H2O. You mix one hydrogen and two oxygen, you get water, right? You mix dash T and dash A and dash N in like a particular order, you get a certain function of a nucleic acid that corresponds to an RNA or DNA strand that's often found within living beings, right? That is not a blueprint, nor is it an instruction. It is a function in which we describe as a molecular machine, which sure, Google it. I'm absolutely happy to concede that proteins are often called molecular machines, as are DNA. But when you talk about what a machine does, especially when you're defining it as a multiple part or multiple faceted system that has a function, all of chemistry is a machine, because that is everything that exists that we know of. Everything is some form of chemistry.
That's why I jump to this from the beginning and ask, are you saying that any sort of naturalistic laws that dictate how something's done, are you going to call those instructions? For example, when gravity pulls in hydrogen atoms to build a star, are those instructions? He said no. And honestly, I don't see why not, if he's going to be doing that with the DNA. Maybe he tried to say that it's a more complicated process, but then again, I mean, what happens with stars is pretty complicated.
Yeah. Stellar nuclear synthesis is pretty complicated.
Right.
So it's A, G, C, and T: guanine, cytosine, thiamine, and adenine. That's A, G, T, and C. If you combine these nucleic acids into a nucleopeptide or a polymer chain nucleopeptide, which is the base formation of DNA and RNA in all living structures on the planet Earth, at least to our knowledge, you can combine those four in any subset of orders and tell the function of what that amino acid will have as an impact on a macromolecule. Just like if you put a magnet near a ferrous material, it will rearrange the structure of that material and magnetize to that material. That is its function. We are describing chemistry.
No, it's blueprints.
You see what I'm saying? And this is the problem I have with people that say, okay, I want you to explain to me at a base level, like I'm 5 years old, what you think RNA or DNA is and what it does. If your baseline is not, it's a chemical reaction, much like H2O, you're not, either you don't understand it at a very base level, so you can't explain it simply enough, or you have a fundamental misunderstanding of what something is. Because by definition, chemistry, according to his definition, would also be a machine.
Yep.
Like the formation of water would be a machine because it's multiple parts, hydrogen and oxygen, coming together to serve a separate function. Water.
Right.
A liquid molecule.
You combine two hydrogens to make a helium.
Yeah.
Those were somehow there are instructions somewhere in either hydrogen atom. I don't know. But that's what I'm saying. It's unfortunate it took so long for him to get to the analogy.
Well, this is why, and I wasn't trying to be rude. I genuinely wasn't trying to be mean and cut either of you off and get just get it out there. But 25 minutes in, we're trying to agree that information is a source of blueprints. Neither of us disagree with that. I don't think either of us would ever disagree with that. However, I can spot it a mile away, and I figured he was either going to go to the complexity of the universe or to DNA when he started talking down this road of blueprints, because I figured he was going to go into the Goldilocks zone, which we've heard arguments for 1 billion times. If you're unfamiliar with it, go look it up, and you were going to destroy that, or he was going to go down the road of biology and chemistry, which I'm not a chemist. I'm not going to claim to be, but I do have a fundamental understanding of how chemistry works. And I do have a base understanding of how DNA, RNA, proteins, polypeptides, polymer chains form. I've spent hours reading papers about side chaining of polymer peptides to look at literal definitions and possible explanations for abiogenesis. Right? We have, as a matter of fact, we're not quite there yet, but we have pretty good understanding of polymer peptide side chain forming that would explain most of the processes of life on Earth. We did this on asteroids, by the way. This is how we're examining how it would work. We put the base polymers on asteroids and did studies to see if they would sidechain to polymer peptides. That's a fun fact. You want to see how you do it without any external intelligent information being involved? Watch polymer peptides sidechaining form on asteroids that are uninhabited and untouched by humans. It's possible. We've examined it.
Well, he'll just say that's God doing it.
And that may be. And anyone that watches may think the same thing. But I'm telling you that, when I say I've studied this and I have at least a base understanding, again, anybody that has even a bachelor's degree in chemistry could wipe the floor with me on how this stuff actually works. But it's dishonest to say that we're not looking at basic chemistry. Microbiology and chemistry go hand in hand when you get down to this level of things like polypeptides, nucleopeptides, and basic understanding of how these things form to give function to macromolecules. They are not blueprints. Mixing hydrogen and oxygen in a container to form water is not a blueprint. It is a function of what happens when you mix 2 oxygen and 1 hydrogen molecule. That's what happens. Or sorry, I've been saying it backwards this whole time. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen. Dihydrogen monoxide. H2O. Yeah. Apologies. I've had it backwards this whole time. And yeah, crucify me for it. I mean, again, I'm not a chemist, but yeah, I will correct myself. 2 hydrogen, 1 oxygen molecule. I've been saying it backwards. But yeah, or H2, or what is it? 8 oxygen molecules form a deadly noxious gas. You can just stick enough stuff together in a particular format and you have chemistry, and now it has its own function. But also function is a how something uses it. So even that's not a particularly good term.
Right.
Which, and
because he was trying to go to design thing, and that requires intent, right? Just because something does a thing doesn't mean that's this design. That's just this function. Function is just how something's used.
To really drive that home, if I showed you a hammer, you would say it has a function. That function may be to drive nails, right? But that's just how you're using it. What if it was a sledgehammer? You wouldn't use it to drive nails, right? You use it to take down walls and to take down small structures because it's designed for destruction, not construction, right? But it's literally how you're using it, because you could use the handle of a hammer to pry open a door, and now it's a pry bar. Is that its design and intent? No, it's its function, because that's how it's being used. And you will never get to function in chemistry, as far as you'll never get to intent with chemistry, as far as I can tell, with the exception of intentional synthesis of new elements.
Right. I mean, it'd be absurd to say 2 hydrogens are intending to make an helium.
Right.
That's going to kind of just be determined.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we'll stay on maybe a few more minutes more to see if any other people want to join the chat. I had opened it up to theists, but atheists as well. If you have something you wanted to talk about with us, or you think we got something wrong, mostly if you disagree, hop on. I'll let you right on in. But Yeah, I was hoping to get. I know a lot of you saw the episode we did with Precept Ninja, that presuppositionalist we had on maybe a month ago, and he was supposed to do uh, a response video to the debate because like so we had agreed prior to the stream that we were going to like dual stream. I was going to stream to my channel. He was going to stream to his. That way, it's two crowds getting ready, knowing about each other. Maybe some of his audience could follow our page, some of our audience could follow his, etc. And but he deleted it right after the episode because of presuppositionalism. It's a bad apologetic. It's not an apologetic. It's presuppositionalism is an excuse of why you don't have to do apologetics, essentially. And so I wanted to get him back on, and because he realized he didn't perform well. It wasn't, like I said, it wasn't really his fault. It was really just presuppositionalism. It's just utter bullshit. He did about as well as any precept would have done, but he hasn't done a response video yet. So still waiting on him. His page has been very silent since the debate. But Precept Ninja, if you're watching, hit us up, man. We'd like to get you back on. Bud Green Jeans, it says, but someone definitely made the hammer or sledgehammer. I think you're missing on Tangela's point.
Okay, but like, A, no, I'm not. But B, is a rock a hammer if I use it to drive in a nail? It is, is my cell phone a hammer if I use it to drive in a nail? But like, if I had never seen a hammer, if I went outside and I saw hammers falling from trees, I would say they're naturally occurring. And then if I saw the original, even though this is probably a blunt force object that was originally used, probably like a club, and literally pre-Homo sapien days. So we probably don't have the original blueprints for hammers. But if I went and looked at copyrights and stuff for particular hammers, like claw hammers and etc., I would be able to find research and papers and actual blueprints of people coming up with ways and methods to improve upon hammers, right? But if I went out and I found them all over the place out in the wild, I'd have a really hard time discerning which were man-made and which were naturally occurring. An acorn has a function that it will grow a oak tree. Does that mean it contains the blueprints of an oak tree? Or is that its function, right? Like, these are, like, we have, like a naturally occurring thing that we can watch, we can see in our own lifetime if you live long enough, right? As far as I've seen, humans don't make synthetic acorns. We can make plastic ones that won't have the same function as an oak tree. Perhaps they have the function to fool you into thinking it's a real acorn, and they might do so. In fact, you might plant it into the ground thinking you're going to grow an oak tree. That may be how good the fake is with its intention of fooling you.
Hey, Bud Green Jeans, what exactly do you think Tangelo's point was? Because when I listened to it, what I was hearing was an argument from analogy. And with a little dishonesty. Like at one point, remember, he had said that blueprints are literally stored in the DNA. He said literally, like he said the words literally, as in like he's not even using an analogy anymore. Like if you were to open up the DNA, you're going to see blueprints. Which that's why I was so specific when I granted it that blueprints are indicative of an intelligent mind. I'm talking specifically about actual blueprints, not some analogy, not some other naturalistic law that could be used to make something else. But I saw this coming a mile away.
Yeah, I mean, the point he was going, the road he was going down, and why at like 25 minutes in, I asked, "Can we get to the point? And how do we cut to the chase?" Because again, we've had these conversations a million times before. Is what he's gonna say is that because these complex things like humans and DNA exist, something must have been the origin of this DNA. Someone wrote these blueprints that's in DNA, right? And when we're talking about it, and again, this base understanding of chemistry will help you with this, but it's to say it's a false analogy. What we're doing is we're saying there's this complicated thing that has this function, and machines are complicated things that have a specific function, and machines are designed, and we often compare and use similar language to define things in DNA like machinery. For instance, I'm looking at an article right now from genome.gov, and it says a major function. Like, just think of how many terms I could use to describe a machine when I'm about to describe what I'm describing. A major function involves storage and expression of genetic information. Think of how many terms we could use in machinery to use that same thing, like a computer.
He said, Bud Green Jr. says, well, if it's just reactions, why can't humans create a synthetic acorn? Why would you think that just because something is just reactions that humans will be capable of recreating it? Like, Ontangelo agreed that stars are just reactions. When I asked him, like, would he consider those blueprints all the laws necessary to make a star? He said no. There's no reason to think that humans can make stars.
Also,
I just don't see why it follows.
This is going to be slightly controversial, but due to genetic sequencing and coding, we might one day, and in fact, we already have edited genetic structures and DNA and RNA. So to answer that question, is we kind of do now. It's just that we're not. I don't know if you're aware of how many lines of code, which I'm going to use in parentheses, that make up a single person's DNA's genetic structure, but it would take a really long time to put that together, a really long time.
Hey,
even if you had hundreds of people working on it at a time.
Bud said, I can complete. Maybe this is a typo. He says, I can't completely. Ontangelo uses the word. I can completely agree. Ontangelo uses the word blueprint. If you substitute that for controls, DNA and RNA do control protein behavior. So if he had used the word control, we would have never gotten to his analogy, because he would have been, if he just said, okay, it's just controlling things, is control indicative of an intelligent mind? No. So like everything that we see in the universe, there are controls on it. That's why it's able to do those things, right?
Magnetism.
Right, like gravity does a limited number of things. If it did anything, there's no way you'd have a star. So everything that you see, natural and unnatural, intelligent and unintelligently designed, requires controls. So if he had used that word, we would have never gotten to his analogy. I would have never agreed with him. I would have been like, no, everything requires controls. It wouldn't exist otherwise. He said, charitably, you could describe a tree as a natural machine that converts carbon dioxide into oxygen. And the reason
that's the point I was making.
And the reason he asked that is because we wanted to know what is and isn't a machine, because the way he defined it, just about anything other than maybe like at the atomic level would constitute a machine, because it's made of complex parts doing things.
this is why it's, and I'm not mad about science that does it. The reason that a lot of scientific articles are written in the way they're written is to help them be more easily understood by the layman. And I am one of those laymen. I am not an expert, right? I'm fully aware I make mistakes. I don't understand it all. It is complex. When we use terms like protein is
He
a
said here,
machine.
this is wrong.
Go ahead.
Okay, so he said yes or no. Is it possible to create a synthetic acorn? So if you're asking if humans can do it, I think Facade already answered that question, right? We might be getting closer to that thing. Not sure if it's possible or not, but we're trying, right? It's not then, but it says no logical reason to believe that reactions could result in desires and preferences. Dude, do you understand like how like what
Do you
happens
have
during
any desire or
puberty?
preference?
Like, how about during puberty? Like, when there's a bunch of testosterone going through my body, how that affects my current desires and preferences? Have you ever looked into the psychology of someone who struggles with depression or have any sort of mental issue going on? Like, it is reactions all the way down.
Have you ever looked at a sugar study? Caffeine, cocaine, nicotine, any of them. Just pick one. Like, dude,
They're all reactions.
they're countless. They're countless. Your brain has properties, and drugs that are addictive have properties that impact how your brain desires things. Like, you can literally get addicted to a substance based off of a chemical reaction that happens in your brain because of that substance. Look at nicotine studies. Look at cocaine studies. Look at sugar studies. Any of them. Pick one. Like, literally, they're chemical reactions caused by an increase in dopamine, which is the feel-good drug in your brain. That is a chemical reaction that causes you to want more dopamine.
Right. It's chemical reactions that make your desire sleep.
Rats, when given cocaine, will literally overdose in a day. You can give them a controlled substance and it will kill them. And onlooking rats, knowing it will kill them, will still intentionally overdose trying to get dopamine. It's the brain is a reaction machine. It's what we do. The brain is just a bunch of chemicals swirling around in your skull.
So he says you seem reluctant to say no at the present time. It is not possible. I thought you said it's not possible. That's what it meant.
To my knowledge, it's not possible.
Yeah, that's what I thought he said. That's why he said we're trying.
If it helps, I'll use the very declarative word no. It is not possible currently.
And I think he was responding to another comment that I said earlier. He says that would lead him into a ultimate controller, which would lead him into his pre-argument. So if you're going to say that the ultimate controller, then everything is controlled. What would an uncontrolled thing look like? That's where we're going to go. He's still not going to be able to get to his argument. I mean, I could just grant.
I mean,
to let him get there, but
you're going down the same road that we like see everybody go down, like the uncaused causer, the unmoved move. It's the classic prime mover argument. Just look it up. I'm sure you've seen it before. If you're unfamiliar with it, like it's we've seen it a million times. All you're doing is you're making a case for special pleading. Where my knowledge, where AAA's knowledge, and where all of humans' knowledge stops, does not insert God. It inserts a lack of knowledge.
Right. And why would a lack of knowledge be evidence of anything? You just don't know. It's like you see
what
happened rock
before 10 to the negative 21 or negative 23.
It's
no
like
clue.
It's like seeing a rock, and you're like, I don't know how that rock came to be, but I think it's evidence of God.
Yeah.
You don't. There's just a gap fallacy. He says, see, now I'm starting to detect a little bit of prejudice in answering simple questions, honestly. Well, what was the prejudice?
What question?
What question specifically?
Which one do you not feel, honestly? And by the way, I think maybe you have a problem with I don't know as an answer, but that doesn't mean I insert God. Just
So
as we're clear.
if you're referring to the acorn thing, so when he said
I
we're
said
trying,
no very
yeah,
clearly.
but and so if he said that we were trying to do that and maybe getting somewhere close to it,
Well, we're not
implicit in that.
synthesizing acorns. We are actually modifying human genetic structure.
So, but essentially, what I'm saying is that would be a no to the acorn thing.
Oh, absolutely. I said, and I went back and I made it very clear, and I said I'll use the good declarative. No, we cannot currently synthesize acorns.
But also, his question wasn't even if humans can currently do it. You asked, is it possible to create a synthetic acorn? I don't know if it's possible. I know.
I mean,
humans
hypothetically, it's possible.
Right. Well, maybe. It depends on what's going on with the acorn. I mean, I could grant yes, sure. It doesn't violate any contradiction. Yes, definitely today. Tons of...
Hypothetically, it's possible. All you need to know is the structure. You need the materials, and you could formulate an acorn.
He says, yes, definitely today, tons of chemical induced desires and preferences. Now, I don't see how you get to that from basic chemical reactions.
All of chemical reactions are basic chemical reactions.
Yeah, I know. That's what I was kind of going to get to. Like like the human psyche. I would argue is the most complex thing that we know of. The human mind. When you break it down, you're going to get to
it's chemicals.
Chemicals. Yeah,
that's literally why I described the brain as a bunch of chemicals swirling around inside your skull. Because that's all it is.
But come on the show. Email us. I'm getting off in a bit of a rabbit. Are you suggesting that the DNA or RNA have preferences? Neither one of us said that. So you said, how do reactions lead to desires and preferences? And I was giving you examples of that, like how any desires and preferences that we have, they can be linked. Like if you look at depressed people or people that are super happy, you can look at the chemical reactions going on in their brain. I don't think anyone said that DNA, RNA have preferences. Nobody's saying that chemical reactions do not always lead to preferences. However, the preferences that we know of in a human psyche, when you break them down, they seem to be chemical reactions. That is what we're saying. And surely basic single cell life forms would have to have a desire or preference to become more complicated. I don't see how that follows.
Yeah, I'd actually disagree with that.
Yeah. Why would it? Like, it's like saying like I used to be a single celled organism, right? I was a zygote. Did I have the desire to become a more complex human being? Like, I think the answer
desires typically mean consciousness, right?
Yeah,
like you kind of have to have more complexity than single cells to get to consciousness.
Right. I would
we're like as we define consciousness, we'd say that a single cell organism can't meet that criteria.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why he thought that. He says, how long did it take you to say the word no, which was requested in the original question? He could have just said no and moved on, but he was trying to elaborate. I mean,
bro, like I answered pretty early as well.
You're being generous and giving us, like good questions, and we're trying to give you good answers. He could have just said no. Yeah, that would have been like boring as hell, right? Like with no explanation. So we're just trying to elaborate.
Like, also, I went on to explain how we're doing like studies and adaptations in human structural anatomy and DNA. We're not really working on acorns. So,
but I'm going to put our email in here. He said, I never said Ontazula was correct. I was hoping the argument would get to where you would challenge him with your laws of logic argument, which was super interesting. I don't think we would have ever gotten there. I don't.
Me either.
Yeah, I don't think.
I mean, it's possible, but I ultimately, what I think the road he was going to go down was a false analogy.
Yeah, he's not a precept. I'm not. Oh yeah, I'm not sure he would have. Are you referring to like one of the presuppositionalist episodes that we had?
I presume you mean like the basic laws of logic have to exist eternally, or essentially exist eternally, because without them we have no form of logic to follow.
Yeah, I guess
I'm guessing that's where you're going.
maybe. He said, "I'm not making the argument for an unseen mover, merely relating what is a possible argument." Yeah,
I
I
mean, yeah,
mean,
like
you can make an argument for anything. That doesn't
yeah,
mean the thing you're arguing for is possible.
that's kind of the point, and that's kind of and the reason. And I, admittedly, even I think AAA was being mildly pedantic at the beginning of the argument. But the reason that we go into deep definitions and we have very specific words that we use when defining this stuff is because I could make an argument for any logical thing or anything, right? As long as it doesn't fall outside of the realm of like the laws of logic, I don't think we can say definitively it's not possible. We just say that it doesn't have a contradiction.
Could you give us
But
an? My bad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah, I mean I mean, like, I could argue for things like Loch Ness, and as long as there's no logical contradiction in the entailment in which I describe it, you're not able to disprove it. But that's not really helpful when you have someone who just defines God as eternal, powerful. I wrote them down somewhere. Eternal, powerful. I don't know. Go ahead.
He says, "I'm not a Christian nor pre-supper. You guys are really presenting a lot of what I would call strawman arguments against the points I've made." What was the straw man? Like, I don't recall any straw man that I said. I mean, earlier you insinuated that reactions couldn't lead to preferences or desires. And I'm just pointing out how that's just demonstrably untrue and goes contrary to like the vast majority of the academic literature that we have. Matter of fact, when somebody gets on depression, the doctor sometimes they prescribe a medicine that alters the chemical reactions in their brains.
This is very true.
Yeah, I don't know how
SSRIs.
Yeah, like I don't know what. Be specific. Tell us, what did we straw man on? I think we answered everything very honestly. Like it'd be one thing for you to say that we got something wrong, but to say that we're straw manning, no, that's.
Oh, I'm happy to say that I very likely and definitely did earlier when I was describing the water molecule got stuff wrong.
Yeah.
However, I mean, when I answer stuff, I try to take time and keep in mind I'm not reading this, so if I misrepresent what you say, it's not intentional. But from what AAA is reading to me and how we're reacting to this, it's not an intentional straw man, nor is it. I mean, I'm not even trying to straw man your argument. I'm just explaining or answering the question. I'm not arguing with you. You're not on the show.
He says you guys are way behind in the comments. So when you say that the human brain is the most complex thing, I would put the word machine in there, and I don't think I would be incorrect.
So, okay, I mean that depends on how we define machine.
Exactly, I'm saying you could
use if you're that word referring to it as an analogy. I don't have a problem with that. If you're saying that it's a man-made structure that functions in a certain way, I might. Because I don't think that brains are man-made. Yeah. Unless you count sperm and eggs being man-made.
So if you're going to use that argument, which is where Ontologilo was going, was we know machines to occur through intelligent mind. DNA is a machine. Therefore, it also occurred through an intelligent mind. Like if that's the argument you're going to make, then like we're going to have problems. Because we're just equivocating on the word machine here. So, I mean, I think that's problematic. That'll be like, what's another word people misuse all the time?
Create.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, so like, yeah. I mean, I think we're just misusing words here, man. Like, that's why I think it's just honestly just a bullshit argument. But I haven't seen what the straw man was. If you'd be specific and say what question we straw man, I can point out silly things in the comment that you said. I think just are laughably trivial. What did you say? There was one comment you had said that. What was it? And that surely basic single cell life forms will have to have a desire or preference to become more complicated. Like, to me, that was pretty absurd argument. Really? No. Just because something did a thing doesn't mean it had the desire to do it. I went bald. Look at me. I started balding when I was about 28. I went ahead and shaved it all when I was like 29.
I beat him to it by about 10 years.
Yeah. Neither one of us chose that. So
yeah, I mean, like, if we look at like the Cambridge Dictionary and Philosophy of Machine, we see a piece of equipment with several moving parts. I would never refer to the brain as a piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Right? Like
that's what I'm saying.
If you define it as a system that uses, like, if you use Wikipedia's definition, a machine is a physical system that uses power to apply forces and control movement. Then your brain is part of a larger machine, which is your body, because your brain doesn't have its own power supply.
And so, yeah, I talked about like dishonesty earlier, and I think this is the way you use the machine is dishonest. I'm not saying you're a dishonest person. I'm talking specifically about the argument. I think this argument is used dishonestly, and I think we can see that manifested in the conversation that me and Antangelo was having at the beginning. Because remember when he was describing instructions, and I wanted to know specifically what instructions were, and also what instructions weren't. And so he just said, like, instructions are just details about how something is done, right? And so that would also include the formation of a star, gravity coming in. He's like, no, that's not instructions, but blueprints on how to build a machine, that definitely is. Well, why? Let's get specific. And I was trying to dig in there to figure out what exactly is the distinction he's making, and he wouldn't answer. He kept going somewhere else. And so that hints the dishonesty. Like, he was unwilling to describe what he meant by instructions, because as soon as he do, we know we're going to have problems. Here's the same thing with the machine. If you the way you're defined, if you call a brain a machine because of the definition that Antangelo was using, or what Facade read, I mean, just about anything other than like an individual subatomic particle would constitute a machine. Like you could say that a atom is a machine, right? Because we have the proton and an electron is doing this. Even I know that's not really what it's doing, but like it's described as that. Electron is said to be orbiting the proton. You could call that a machine if you want to. And there's
especially given that they have a function.
Right, exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, other than like an individual quantum particle, everything is a machine at that point. And that was kind of useless, right? Because now we don't have any examples of non-machines. So what would a non-intelligently designed thing look like? Because everything would be an example of that, because they're all machines, right? Like, you see the problems with this. That's why this argument doesn't work. That's why I call it dishonest, because you want to call the brain a machine, but you're not going to want to define what a machine is. And Bud, give us a definition of a machine. Like, tell us what you think. Like, did you agree with Antangelo's example? I thought, didn't he say that he wouldn't call it a machine either? I thought he said he would have used the word control.
The commenter did. Antangelo.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I mean, the commenter. So he says, we were discussing DNA and RNA controlling proteins, and that's where it would be implied that DNA RNA has a preference or a desire. You've got to have the
no.
So dude, what we said, okay. It is absurd to think that every chemical reaction is going to result any desire or a preference. But we know that a bunch of desires and preferences are the results of chemical reactions. You see what I mean? You see what I mean by that? Like, for instance, like you could say that all cars are made of metal, but not everything made of metal was a car. You see like the gap in reasoning here? That's what's going on here.
And I think you may be trying to like assign the word function to the word preference.
Right.
Just because something does something, that doesn't mean it's its preference.
He said,
Like-
Nick, go ahead, my bad.
I was gonna say, like, for instance, when we put liquid water into a container, it forms to that container. That's because liquids form to their thing. That's not a preference. It's just a function of liquids. It's that state of matter. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not a preference. Water has no preference.
Right. He said next week to having, maybe there's a typo here. I'll just read it verbatim. Next week to having desires, apparently there must have been a lot of undesired random chemical reactions to become complex enough to have a desire. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But like, if you're,
I'll point out that if you're talking about the polypeptide side chaining to form RNA and DNA to ultimately form what is in our brain to establish a preference, I wouldn't really call that random either. But yes, that is a complicated thing.
okay, look what he called a machine. The defined machine as something that does work. So if it's moving at all, then it's doing work. Do you realize that everything in the universe does that? There is nothing that is perfectly still. You know, it would violate the laws of physics to be perfectly still.
Absolutely, you know, the concept of absolute zero isn't even chemically or physically possible.
Right. Because it requires no
it's a
energy
concept.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't get there. So by that definition, everything is a machine. Even the quantum particles that I had excluded earlier would be a machine. An electron by itself, just floating out in the universe.
If you have a basic understanding of the conservation of energy, like you'd understand that literally, like, energy or mass is just energy that hasn't been converted yet. So if it has mass or it is moving, it's one or the other or both. So literally, as an object of mass approaches the speed of light, it becomes energy. And vice versa.
Think about this: a bird is flying through the air, drops a turd. That turd is flying. It's going down. It's doing work.
It is a machine.
It's a machine. This is what I was saying, and I got it right. The moment you define it, it's going to fall into absurdity. Like, we're going to start having problems. This is why Antangelo would not define what he meant by blueprints. He wanted to keep it ambiguous. That way he could fallaciously use it in his DNA argument. So, Bud, hold on. Bud, come on the show, man. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm going to post our email address in the comments. And he says I was born bald. Yeah, some people are. I was born with a lot of hair, and then I became bald. But
I don't remember. I was too young at the time.
But what I'm gonna post our email in the comments. Welcome you to come on the show. Email us, man. We'll love to have you on. Hopefully things won't get as heated as it did with Fontangelo. I'm sorry that happened. I was kind of like disappointed that he left the show so early. NJ, stop. All right, go ahead, real girl. Go. But
yeah, I wouldn't really call the brain equipment either, and I don't think you really would, in like an honest form, right?
And the brain well may be the most complex piece of equipment ever. I mean, if you want to refer to it as equipment, like as in like any piece of matter as equipment, I mean, you can do that. I just wouldn't call it that. Like when my daughter was born, is she a piece of equipment?
Humans are equipment.
Right. I mean, she could be. Well, he said the brain is, but
Yeah.
everything on there is doing stuff, including her heart, her hand, and everything. You could just say she's just an equipment.
All humans are a conglomeration of equipment.
Right. The Earth is spinning on its axis. It's doing something. The Earth is equipment. I mean, but do you
like
see the problem, bud?
Yeah, when we use these equivocations and we use this and again, I was going to this earlier. We have scientific articles, and I'm not mad about them, but we use it to explain to the average reader, and we use language that people can associate with and make it more easily understood. Just like when AAA earlier was describing how an atom functions, and we use an electron circling a nucleus. That's not actually what's happening. If you've ever seen the analogy or the breakdown of what an atom looks like, you're almost always going to see an image of a nucleus being like circled by an electron, although that's not really what's happening. Just like when we describe proteins or RNA and DNA as machines, that they're not actually machines. We're giving you an analogy of something that's a little more easily digestible to the layman. And I fully admitted earlier, I am a layman. They're doing this so we can kind of help understand the way these things work and how like we can kind of give some semblance of what they do meaning. Because without it, if you just said that the function of RNA is when in a very specific, unique structure, does XYZ as a chemical reaction with like this other form, you probably have a hard time explaining what DNA actually is. But if I just said it stores genetic information, much like a hard drive stores information on a computer, you get that. I could explain that to somebody. But that doesn't make DNA a computer. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah. Thanks for watching, Nichabod. I was on his podcast.
Actually.
You said you got a dip.
Yeah, I got to.
Oh yeah, me too. I gotta put her in bed. So hey,
Bud Greens.
He says back to Ontangelo, if you had given him control instead of Blueprint, which he would have accepted, you could have gotten to the laws of logic. Maybe. I don't know. I feel like he wasn't interested in that. I feel like he was very interested in making this DNA argument. And as a matter of fact, I went and checked out a bunch of videos of him when he's called in and talked heathen, some of his discussions on Discord, and they all seem to go to this DNA or abiogenesis. So like I knew this was kind of coming, you know. So I never really saw him get into a discussion on laws of logic. So I was familiar with him before he came on the show. So, but hey, bud, if you want to discuss the laws of logic, come on the show. I'm gonna put the email in. Oh, you out? All right, guys. I'm about to end the stream. Real quick, I'll put the email in the comments, and I'll tag it. I'll pin it. Email us. Come on the show, man. All right, bud. In the stream. Thanks for the comments. Thanks for watching, guys.